Hello and welcome to the Tibetan Buddhist Society of Canberra Sunday program. This is where we have regular karma biting meditation session followed by a talk, and I do sincerely apologize for being a little late this morning. I have not done a live broadcast through Facebook too often, and I had failed to click one little box before it went live. So I found that little box now and I clicked it and we are live, I believe. And I can see that I have 4 viewers. So thank you very much for joining me today in this calm abiding meditation session and followed by a short talk. So seeing that we are already 14 minutes late, again I sincerely apologize. Let's get started with our meditation. So before we start, please join with me in requesting prayers and teachings. In the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By virtue of giving and the like, I shall reach Buddhahood to aid all beings. May all beings have happiness and the cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May they never part from the happiness that knows no suffering, and may they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion to those near and far. So this morning we'll have a 20-30 minute meditation session. Please follow along as best you can. No experience is needed. I'll talk you through. If you have any questions, please throw them in the comments box and I will do my best to answer them as we go. Following the calm abiding meditation session, I'm going to give you a little talk on spirituality and religion. What is spirituality? What is religion? How do they work with each other? How do they work in society? And most importantly, what we do with them? What does that mean to us? Okay, so please join with me now as we meditate. As the sound of the singing bowl drifts away, please bring your attention to your body. Take a few big, deep breaths in through your nose and draw your attention to your body. Getting comfortable either in a chair or on the floor cross-legged. By all means, you do not need to sit on the floor cross-legged if this is too uncomfortable. And sitting on the floor or in a chair is very similar. And in fact, you can meditate in any position at all. You can even meditate while driving, as long as you keep your eyes open and do put part of your brain on what's on the road ahead. But today, let's do a more traditional focus. We start with body scans to check our posture. So starting with our toes, bring your attention to your body and scan your body from your toes, moving up your feet to your heels, moving up your shins to your knees, and continuing on up to your hips. Giving thanks and being grateful for our legs and what they do for us. Continue scanning now around your hips, up your back, up your spine, visualizing each vertebrae stacked neatly on top of each other like a tower of coins. Nice and tall, reaching to the sky without being rigid or stiff. And again, we give thanks and gratitude for our back and the strength that it brings us. Reaching our shoulders, we make sure they're down and relaxed. Pulled back a tiny little bit, but not too much pressure. Scanning down our arms to our elbows, and then continuing on down to our hands, where both hands are resting in our lap with the palms facing upwards, right hand resting in the palm of our left, and our thumbs touching very gently to form a little bridge above our palms. Traveling back up our hands and our forearms to our elbows, continue scanning up to our shoulders. We give thanks for our arms. Now traveling up the back of our neck, back of our head, up to the crown of our head, where we imagine a little piece of string is attached to the crown of our head, pulling us up. This helps to keep our back straight, our neck straight, and it also helps to tuck our chin in just a little. And as we focus, we come over the top of our head, down our forehead to our eyes. Imagining this piece of string pulling our head up also helps our eyes focus or land just about a meter or so in front of us. And our eyes traditionally are half closed, half open, with a soft focus, just falling on whatever is in front of us. Don't focus too much on it, but don't shut it out either. Continue scanning down our nose to our mouth, where we notice our tongue is resting behind our top teeth, just on our upper palate. And then we scan to our chin. Now we go back all the way down to our toes, so scanning our chin, our mouth, focusing on our tongue where it lands, to our nose, to our eyes, just checking our posture there with our eyes, and we have a soft focus, scanning up our forehead, to our head, to the back, the crown of our head, checking that string is pulling us nice and tall, scanning down the back of our head to our neck, down to our shoulders, resting our shoulders, down and back a little bit, scanning down our arms to our elbows, and a little bit of space between our elbows and our body to let the flow of air through. Scanning down our arms to our hands, checking our posture there for our hands, and scanning back up to our shoulders. Now down our spine, checking our posture there nice and tall without being too rigid. Down our spine to our hips, giving thanks. Continuing on down our legs to our knees, all the way down to our ankles and our feet and toes. So that now is one body scan. I'll be quiet for a moment and let you do 2 more body scans in your own time. Just keeping your focus on your body, scanning up and down, checking your posture, and being grateful for your body. Bringing your attention back to your body if you had drifted away to somewhere else, which is perfectly okay and understandable. So when your mind does drift to something else, and it will, just gently bring it back to your, if it's a flower, if it's a breath. Do that without judgment or anger, just knowing that that's what your mind does. Your mind is there to try to keep you safe. It wants to jump around and focus on the environment around you in case there might be dangers. So every time you notice your mind has wandered and you bring it back to the focus that you want it to be on, that's like doing one arm curl in a gym. It's like doing one squat for your legs in a gym. It's an exercise that is strengthening your mind, strengthening you to focus on what you want to focus on. So be grateful for that opportunity to do an exercise and strengthen your mind. Now we'll turn our attention to the breath. The breath is a very traditional thing to focus on, and it's very easy too because it's there with you wherever you go. Right up to the very end, you'll have your breath with you. So many people focus on the very tip of their nose, focusing on the breath entering their nose, maybe visualizing it traveling all the way down to their lungs and watching their lungs expand and contract and the air coming back up again, and the tip of their nose where it exits our body. Some people focus on their bellies and watch it rise and fall as they breathe. It's completely up to you which one you do. So now with our focus on our breath, let's just watch our body breathing. Breathe in, breathing out, and we count 1. Watch our body breathing in and breathing out. We count 2. Watching our body breathing in and breathing out. Count 3. Breathing in through our nose. Breathing out. Count 4. And we keep breathing and keep counting till we reach about 10 or 12. And once we reach 10 or 12 or wherever we wish to choose to stop, we start counting backwards, back down to 1. All the while maintaining our posture like we just did in our scans. And if we start focusing on something else, if our mind jumps to what we're going to have for dinner tonight, then gently, without judgment or criticism, bring it back to our breath. Being grateful for the opportunity to exercise and strengthen our mind and our focus. Breathing in, breathing out. 7. Breathing in, breathing out. 8. Breathing in, breathing out. 9. And for beginners or people who find themselves distracted easily, maybe you need to do that little voice in your head just as I was then. Say to yourself, breathing in as you breathe in. Say to yourself, breathing out as you breathe out, and then count. For those more experienced, you might not need to do that, and you can focus on your breath without any mind chatter. I'll now leave you for a few moments to focus on your breath, counting from 1 up to 10 or so, and then back down to 0. Be gentle and forgiving with yourself as you do this. Just check your mind. Where is it? Is it still focusing on your breath? If not, gently bring it back to your breath. And take a little mini break to readjust. Mini breaks are just as important as the meditation itself. For a mini break will allow you to rededicate your efforts to the focus of your meditation without pushing yourself. Have yourself a mini break again to attend to anything that needs attention, maybe a sore knee or a scratch. Quick drink of water. And we can rededicate our energy now to the final session in this meditation part, where we will draw in even more detail, focusing on our breath. Here we'll look at the super qualified breathing, where we focus on the three components of the inhalation, the retention at the top of the inhalation, and then the three components of the exhalation. So I'll talk you through this again. When you're ready, find your posture, rededicate yourself to the focus on your breath. And as we breathe in, we notice that our inhalation starts slowly, slow beginning, and it speeds up and becomes quicker in the middle before it finally slows down and tapers off towards the end of our inhalation. Then we reach a calm, abiding moment where we pause with our body full of life-sustaining oxygen. before we switch to the exhalation, which again starts slowly and builds up to the middle, where we let out most of the oxygen in a short period of time and tapers off again towards the end of the exhalation. Sometimes there is a pause between the exhalation and the next inhalation, sometimes not. Either way is okay. Just let your body do what your body does. So those three parts of the inhalation again are a slow tapered beginning before we reach a rush of air entering our body, and then a tapered ending. So it's a bit like a football with a bit of a pointy end one end and a pointy end the other end. And then we reach the retention, the calm abiding, where everything is still, before we change to an exhalation. Again with a slow tapered beginning, quickly changing to the middle part of our exhalation, where the air rushes out of our body and then tapers off towards the end of our exhalation. And for me, there's a pause. So as we breathe now and watch these parts, tapered beginning of the inhalation, the middle build up of the rush of air, and then the tapered end of the inhalation. Pause, retention, before it changes to the tapered beginning of the exhalation, and a rush, the expulsion of air, to then taper off to the end and stop. So as we watch these smaller parts of our breathing, don't try to change them. Please don't try to control them. Just let your body breathe. If one is short and one is long, that's okay. If you have a pause at the bottom of your exhalation, that's fine. If you don't, that's even better than fine. So don't try to change these, but just notice, like a scientist observing an experiment. How long are your tapered beginnings? How much air rushes into your body or out of your body? Was that the same as last breath? Doesn't matter if it was or wasn't. We're just noticing, not judging, not evaluating, just watching. So the tapered beginning, the rush of air in the middle, and then a tapered ending to a pause or the retention at the top of the inhalation. Change to an exhalation, the tapered, slower start, leading to a rush of expulsion, a rush of air leaving our body, and to a tapered ending to the bottom of our exhalation. If you wish to count your breath like we did last session, you can add that on, or you can just focus on these parts of our breathing. Now again, I'll leave you for a few moments to do this on your own. If you find your mind wandering, or maybe I should say when you find your mind wandering to something else, gently, without judgment, bring it back to the breath and rededicate your focus. And be grateful that your mind is doing its job and keeping an eye out of the world around you. And I will keep an eye on the time. You just keep an eye on your breath. Don't forget to watch your posture as well. And if you need it, take a mini break. How did everybody go? Maintain a little bit of focus. Had a chance to practice a bit of selfless me time. Thank you for joining me in that meditation session. Now, there are some prayers typical of the Tibetan Buddhist Society of Canberra which we do before teachings. Not that my talk is really a teaching, but let's do these prayers anyway. According to the intelligence and predisposition of each being, we ask that you turn the Dharma wheel of greater, lesser, and common vehicles. With the brilliance of your wisdom, O compassionate one, illuminate the darkness of ignorance enclosing my mind. Enlighten my intelligence and wisdom so that I may gain insight into the Buddha's words and the texts that explain them. So my talk today, as I said in the promo and the beginning, is on spirituality and religion. So the difference between those two, the purpose of them within society and within our body, within ourselves, in our life. So if you have any questions throughout, please throw them in the comments box, and I will try to answer them as we go. So what is spirituality and how is it different from religion? Today I'll discuss this very question. What is spirituality? How is it different from religion? So a decisive definition of each will not be offered because many people have attempted to define these things. Many academics, many monastics have attempted to define what they are. And while each definition isn't necessarily bad, there's been a lot of arguments about, well, does it cover the full spectrum? Is it any good? So agreeing on one particular definition is yet beyond the collective. So fair enough too, I think, because spirituality and religion are very complex and often subjective topics. So I won't be offering a definition, but I will draw upon some of the definitions that have been proposed today. So let's have a look at the purpose. What is the purpose of religion? Well, basically, I'm proposing that it's an instrument which attempts to satisfy human spirituality. So that's my thoughts on the two. So religion is an instrument attempting to satisfy human spirituality. So to be really rudimentary, to put it in a way that my welfare brain can understand anyway, spirituality is the customer and religion is the business. Now, I don't mean that in any derogative sort of sense. I'm just trying to make an analogy. So what makes human beings distinctly different from other living animals is that we all have spirituality, which asks big questions about the world, where we live, why we live, what's our purpose, what's our place in the world, why are we here? Nearly all of us ponder these questions, the meaning of life and the meaning of it all. Some of us ponder them a lot, and some of us sort of brush over them and not too worried at all. But nearly all of us, pretty much, at some point in our life, will sit and contemplate why we're here. Some say that humans have no choice in this matter, for we are pre-programmed to seek meaning. How we find meaning and to what degree depends on our individual spiritual makeup. But the vast majority of us, and statistics show that 84% of us, seek this meaning from belonging to some sort of religious organization. So spirituality, one definition I found, not saying it's correct or it's the only one, but one I found is a person participating in a religious ritual, such as a communal prayer, liturgical dancing, meditation or chanting, may well have an experience of transcendence. This might be a moment of ecstasy, an experience of God, or the gods as real or as mystical. The personal interior dimension of religion is traditionally described as spiritual. Spirituality has long been understood as the personal, affective element of religion. So it's the personal interior definition, and it's the sort of affective element of religion, according to that definition. So the assertion that spirituality is an internal personal dimension supported from various different religious and academic perspectives. This personal dimension of human beings is that which experiences the events of life, and it generates feelings in response to those experiences. So those feelings, hope, fulfillment, gratitude, maybe on a negative sense. If the spiritual experience was negative, then maybe those feelings will also be negative. So if it's a tragic loss, people might ask, why did this happen to me? What did I do to deserve this? But nonetheless, this internal personal dimension is what experiences life and what generates those feelings in response to these experiences. So while there is an agreement that spirituality is internal and personal, this is where the agreement seems to end. Maybe because it's so personal, spirituality actually means something different to every single person on the planet. It's very complex. It's a little bit like personality. So personality may be able to be boxed into labels, but there's always going to be parts of everybody's personality that falls outside of these boxes. So that's in my mind how it works. One particular sociologist tried to make boxes for spirituality. The 4 boxes that she came up with was the theistic, okay, basically having a relationship with a god, gods, some sort of religious organization. The extra theistic, so a spiritual experience about something beyond themselves, but not necessarily linked to any sort of deity, any sort of god. The ethical, with a focus on being ethical and living one's best self. And then also a belief and belonging type of spirituality, where one believes in God and the doctrines that belong to that particular God, while also being part of a religious community. So just thinking about it right now, I guess belief and belonging don't need to fit together, because I certainly get a lot out of belonging to a Sangha, but the belief in a God part doesn't come into it for me. So the theistic package is based on links between spirituality and religious organizations, God or gods and the like, providing some evidence that one can be both spiritual and religious. So the extra theistic package describes how a sense of wonder or awe or transcendence to something bigger can be drawn from or evoked within the individual by almost anything. You know, someone can get a sense of awe from artwork, from the natural world, from music, from books. So that's what they mean by the extra theistic sort of spirituality. Not only things, but also the interconnectedness of society can bring about a sense of transcendence and providing meaning, suggesting that religion may not necessarily be required for a spiritual existence. So there I'm just trying to say basically that spirituality and religion can be linked, but spirituality on its own can exist without religion. But I wonder if religion can exist without spirituality. So the sociologist that came up with these 4 neat little packages, Nancy Emmerman, she seems to sort of say that these are nice, neat little discrete packages, but they're actually not, because you've probably already come to the same conclusion that there's a lot of crossover. The ethical side of spirituality definitely falls into also the theistic side of it, the extra theistic, especially if you draw your sense of awe from nature. Then you've probably got some moral and ethical attitudes about nature. And the belief and belonging spirituality part has certainly got ethical components. So just without digging any deeper, we can see that ethics within our spirituality crosses over into many other layers areas as well. So you can see how trying to define something like spirituality is very, very difficult. I'll give you a particular case study here that I found. Now, Peter is not his real name, but he's a real person. He belongs and participates to 3 separate different religious organizations. This shows me a high degree of sort of belief and belonging when he needs to participate in 3 different organizations. He also meditates, so that would fall into the extra theistic area. He's also an ordained Presbyterian minister. So this shows that he's got a connection, a relationship with his God. So the theistic side of spirituality. But he's also a staunch social activist. So definitely very, very ethical as far as society goes. And he says himself that that's the most important part of his spirituality. So in this case study, it exemplifies the complexities of spirituality and how even when you try to define it in these neat little packages, there just really isn't one. So you've probably heard of Richard Dawkins, who he's a self-proclaimed atheist, and he says that people seem to have a need to seek meaning. This meaning seeking, the need to answer the big questions, is in essence spirituality. And in so doing, he ascribes an intention to create the universe. So Western religious philosophy is sort of an idea around that. I won't go any deeper into there. But Richard Dawkins basically says, thinking along these spiritual lines, having a theistic understanding is a delusion. So he's very much into the science of the world. So I wonder if you can have a spiritual relationship with science, because while they might ask these big questions, why am I here? How did the universe get here? How do we all work together? Science can answer a lot of that. So, I don't know, can an atheist have spirituality? And is that spirituality for them answered through some of the more hard science things that we do in humanity? Interesting. So, another sociologist that I was looking at by the name of Ruth says that people are now searching more for spiritual meaning. She says, so years ago, people used to be born into a particular tradition. Okay, if you were born into a family that was Catholic, for example, then you became a Catholic. If you were born into a Theravadan Buddhist family, then you became a Theravadan Buddhist. But Ruth says that nowadays people are actively searching for more. They're shopping around. And she even uses the term spiritual marketplace and says it's perfectly okay, and people are becoming very, very accepting of the fact that you may go, say, to an Anglican communion on a Sunday and then meditate throughout the rest of the week. And at the markets on a Saturday, you go and get your cards read, your tarot cards read, to find out what's going to happen to you in the future. And people are more and more accepting of this spiritual shopping around, picking and choosing from different places. So from a personal view, this is a good thing, especially when we think about the ethical elements of spirituality. Because after all, don't we want people and companies to make ethical decisions about their products and services? So that comes from the idea, I missed a little bit there, sorry. It comes from the idea that businesses and organizations are tapping into this spiritual marketplace, and they're actually starting to bring spirituality into their products. You can see it a lot in well-being organizations and yoga and gymnasiums and the like. So that there's more of a direct link there. But we also see it in companies and organizations that offer a service, where they're linking into this spiritual happiness and contentment with their service. So that's where I was saying, I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but I feel like it is. Because I feel it brings the idea of spirituality more to the fore, and people can start making better decisions about how they're going to live their life and the impacts that they will have on this world. Okay, let's have a quick look at religion now. It's not quite as hard to define because it can be measured just a little bit easier. Because most of us, I think, and the surveys that I studied in putting this together, most of us, when we talk about religion, we talk about the rituals that happen within that religion, and the doctrines that are attached to that religion, the traditions, the community, the leadership. There's usually a person, you know, a monastic of some sort, leading that religion. So in those ways, it can be a little more easily measured. But not all religions have rituals and doctrines and traditions and communities and things. And there's even religions now that are purely 100% online. I mean, I know COVID has forced most religious organizations to do exactly what we're doing now and being more online. But there are some organizations that have never had a physical location and they only operate online. Have a look at the Church of the Blind Chihuahua. It's got a weird name, but it's a legitimate religious organization. So that was the Church of the Blind Chihuahua. Just Google that and you'll find it. It's pretty funny, but it's also quite serious as well. So they don't have any physical presence and don't meet physically. So we can easily see that there are many forms of a similar religion, such as Buddhism. Okay, there are many different traditions within Buddhism. Look at the Christian world. There are many, many denominations that are all considered Christian. And even with Islam, which hasn't changed in many, many years, there's still sort of three distinct parts of Islam. So in the final word of trying to attempt to define religion, even though it's a little easier under those sort of ritual doctrine, etc., we can't really define religion because religion itself, that term, that word, and understanding of what a religion is a very Western concept. So I think if you went to many Eastern places and started talking to them about religion in the way that most of us Westerners understand it, they wouldn't agree with us. It's much bigger than a separate sort of thing that we attend to occasionally on weekends or after hours. It's an all-consuming part of their life, and they don't see religion in the same way that Western society tries to define it. I won't go into it, but basically there was a huge deliberate movement in the Middle Ages to define religion and make religion a thing in the West so that it could deliberately grab more attention and more control. So what are the differences between spirituality and religion? We've already had a quick look. You can probably pull out of what I've said some of the differences there already, is that spirituality is internal, it's very personal, can't really be boxed, as in there's no one ritual that people do. Like that case study I gave, he attends his own churches, but then he meditates. He also is very active in social activism. There might not necessarily be a community. Some people find the solitude of nature to be exceptionally spiritual, while some people find the dancing and singing and evangelic, that word just fell out of my mouth, in a Hillsong style organization that has a lot of passionate singing and dancing and praise God type of thing. They find that community sense to be a vital part of their spirituality. So religion, on the other hand, is sort of external, a bit more controlled, a bit more defined with boxes of, okay, this is the rituals that that religion does. I mean, we can separate Theravadan Buddhism from Mahayana Buddhism by the Bodhisattva idea. Theravadins don't have that bodhisattva idea or concept. So there's one sort of doctrine that clearly separates those two religions. So one particular sociologist that I like to quote from, and I'll read it for you, he says, "So clearly people believe they can be spiritual without the aid of religion. This kind of spirituality might be achieved through the regular practice of yoga, tai chi, astrology, tarot card reading, or a strong commitment to belief such as reincarnation. However, religious people also maintain that spirituality is an irreducible element of religion. Religious experiences, rituals, and practices cultivate for the individual an enduring sense of transcendence." So this makes more sense, I think, to me anyway, if we view these things from their purpose. And as I said right at the very beginning, to me that purpose is the purpose of religion is to address the needs of individual spirituality. So the reason that religion exists is to satisfy the individual spirituality. I mean, it makes sense to me, and I'm not trying to convince you at all, but I'll just put it to you. If we didn't have spirituality at all, if we didn't ask the big questions about how did I get here and what's the purpose of life, then would religion survive? Why would people keep turning up to an organization that preaches about an all-benevolent, all-knowing, loving, graceful God if people didn't really care about how they got here and what's going to happen to them after they die in particular? Like if we truly are just biological sort of flukes, and when we die we're just going to turn back into dust, back into the earth, and be worm food for, a tree to grow in, and everybody was happy to accept that, then would there be any religious organizations? So that's what makes me think anyway, that the purpose of religion is to satisfy the needs of our spirituality. Spirituality is indeed part of religion, for many regularly seek answers to that spiritual questions through religion. But as the quote indicates, one can also find answers to their spiritual questions from non-religious elements. So both religion and spirituality are complex and difficult to describe or define. They may in fact suffer from too many definitions. So while religion may be external with elements and can be easily sort of understood, categories, measured, spirituality is more sort of intuitive and flexible. And I actually drew a little diagram here that helps me anyway to understand. So the straight line you can see there is spirituality. Now it's not really meant to be a spectrum or a continuum, but that's our spirituality. Because it's so individual and so varied, it is a bit like a continuum from the far left to the far right. Now don't compare that to the politics left and right at all. But the boxes here, the orange boxes, are meant to represent religions. Now some of them certainly overlap. You can see I've tried to draw, and this is just a sort of representation. This is absolutely not at all exhaustive. But there's a lot of overlap between the religions of the book, for example, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. There's a lot of overlap. They all recognize Jesus. Some obviously say he's the Son of God, and some say, he was just a very clever man and a prophet. But they all recognize Jesus anyway. So there's certainly a lot of overlap there. Even between the major traditions of Buddhism, there's definitely a lot of overlap. So the people on the pink line that fall within the box, their spirituality would be neatly satisfied by everything that goes on in that religion. I wouldn't have any questions that can't be answered by that religion. So for example, if you were here on the pink line, you're right inside that box. Everything inside that religious box answers your spiritual needs. You're completely happy. What if you were here This is your spirituality. But there isn't actually a religion in the world that suits you personally. So maybe you might find some comfort in this religion, and you'll find some comfort in this religion, but they won't satisfy everything there is that you want to ask. So maybe you'll call yourself spiritual but not religious, because you don't regularly go to the sessions in this church, and you don't regularly go to the sessions in this mosque or in a temple. But you like a bit of this and you like a bit of that, and there's some that are just some questions that are just unanswered. So that's sort of, for me, what spirituality and religion is all about. So what? What's the point of having this discussion? Well, the last thing I want to put to you is, what does it mean to know that spirituality is an individual thing that's on this line? They have many different answers, might be satisfied from a bit of this religion, a bit of that religion, a bit of nature, a bit of community. What does that mean to know that? Well, you'll need to answer that for yourself, because just like spirituality is very individual, so are the answers. But for me, I'll just put it out there that knowing what spirituality is and what religion is sort of frees me up a little bit to follow whatever I want to follow in order to satisfy my spiritual needs. So I get a lot out of Buddhism. I absolutely get a lot of my answers from Buddhism. But there's some parts of Buddhism too that don't quite fit with me, which is again why I love Buddhism, because it says that's okay. If it doesn't quite fit with you, then just leave it for now, and maybe you'll come back later, and maybe I'm just not enlightened enough down the path to understand those parts, and I'll come back to them later and get it. But I also very much love just being on my own in nature. I find bushwalking amongst the trees awe-inspiring. And I don't know if there's Buddha nature in trees or whether some massive all-knowing creator God created them. Either way, it's wonderful. And I don't feel guilty about spending time on my own amongst nature, because I know for me, that's part of my spiritual needs. I also love sailing, and for me, that's very calming, very centering. So is that part of my spirituality? I almost feel like it is. So the point, I guess, of knowing that the purpose of religion is to satisfy the needs of individual spirituality sort of goes both ways. It allows people to shop around freely without guilt, going, oh, well, I am a Catholic on paper, and maybe I shouldn't be going to that Buddhist temple to do some meditation. Well, that's not right. Who says that? Where's the should in all of that? But on the flip side, I think it puts a little bit of emphasis or responsibility onto the religious organizations as well to deliberately satisfy the needs of the people. Obviously, they're not going to be changing what they believe, changing their creed, but I guess a little bit like a business. How do you look after your customers? Now, here we're not just trying to sell them things to make money. We're actually trying to sell them things to save them or to give them a happier life, to make them a bit more content, or however you want to put it. I'm probably not very eloquent there, but we want to bring them closer to enlightenment, bring them closer to God or heaven or the eternal afterlife or rebirth or whatever particular doctrine you believe. So I think from my side, an individual perspective, it gives me the freedom and confidence to know that I can shop around. This spiritual marketplace is such a thing. And I also suggest that for most religions, it puts a little bit of responsibility back onto them to actually not just be saying the same old things over and over again, but to move with the times and understand how the modern people live and work and go about their life, and try to satisfy those people a little more. That's just my perspective. But I do notice that the Catholic Pope is very much more environmentally active these days than the last few were. So I think that's a good example of somebody who's actually doing it. Okay, that is my little rant. Maybe I went on a little bit too much, but I came across these topics during my studies, and I thought they were very, very interesting and very fascinating, and I wanted to share them with you today. So I do indeed appreciate the opportunity to share them with you. And I'm happy to take questions if you've got any. I haven't seen any in the chat yet. I'm also happy knowing that it is 20 past 12. We've been here for a little bit over an hour to dedicate any merit we may have acquired and let you go about your beautiful Sunday afternoon. So if you join me, we dedicate the merit. By this merit, we may overcome the defilements and gain omniscience. May I liberate all beings from the oceans of birth, old age, sickness, and death. May whatever small amount of merit I've acquired by the practice of mindfulness today benefit all sentient beings in their journey. May you be happy, may you be healthy, and may you not know suffering. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.